Welcome to the Wildlife Wire. I'm Mark Searles,
And I'm Samantha Miller.
and this is your source for wildlife news and the people that make it.
Hello, and welcome to the Wildlife Wire. Today, we are honored to spotlight Bill Masure, whose extraordinary journey has spanned over 40 years as a photojournalist with KCNC TV, which is CBS in Denver. Along the way, Bill has captured the essence of our changing West, reporting on climate, water, energy, and podcast favorites like mountain lions and wolves. His work has earned him more than 20 Emmy Awards and 2 Edward R. Murrow Awards for his powerful, moving storytelling. Today, Bill channels his storytelling mastery into conservation. He serves as Senior Videographer and Editor for Wildlife Protection Solutions, where he combines creative vision with cutting-edge tools like AI-powered real-time camera traps, immersive VR experiences, and digital platforms to protect endangered wildlife and ecosystems around the world. Bill is not just documenting nature, he is helping to preserve it, one unforgettable story at a time. And yes, Bill does have spare time, and what he does in it, he's a runner, a swimmer, a music lover, a poet, and even a keeper of a few thousand honeybees. Because why not, Bill? Why not pick up a hobby? With Bill,
Absolutely.
you get a rare blend of narrative courage and technological savvy, a heartfelt champion of collaboration, community engagement, and the wild places we strive to protect here on the Wildlife Wire. So, welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark. It's an honor to be here with you guys today. I've been big fans of your work, not just here in Colorado, but some of the other states. And can't thank you enough for inviting me today.
Well, we are thrilled to have you, and we would love for our listeners to understand just a little bit of an overview about what you do and what your work focuses on right now. And then we'll dive into some questions because I think you work with some big cats that we are very interested in.
Well, the cats are certainly near and dear to my heart, but it's just a small part about my work with Wildlife Protection Solutions based in Golden, Colorado. WPS, as we like to call ourselves, our main focus is using technology to protect endangered animals and ecosystems around the world. So that includes things like using camera traps to take an image, say, on a protected park or reserve, identify those images as cars, people, or animals through an AI platform, and alerting people in real time as to what could be a possible intrusion on their land. That's the anti-poaching part about what we do. But some of the other cool things that can happen with that is with that remote technology, which really is like adding an incredible amount of staff to an organization. We sometimes will see, say, a leopard with a snare injury in, say, South Africa or Kenya or Tanzania. Wildlife vets can then set up a trap with cameras to trap that leopard, go out, anesthetize the leopard for a short period of time, treat that wound, and let it go. The technology is also great for keeping an eye on rangeland management, where you can see if too many elephants are grazing in a certain area, or if Cape buffalo have moved into a place that you need to manage either their populations or some of the landscape that they thrive on. Wildlife managers can use this technology to make good decisions. And when we think about wild places, know that certain countries in certain parts of the world aren't as wild as we might think they are. Almost every place I go in the world, I'm amazed at how much information and data is gathered on everything from gorillas in Uganda, gorillas in Rwanda, to wolves in Colorado, to jaguars in Brazil. There's very few places where someone's not keeping an eye on those animals that live in those places. So that's a small part about what we do at WPS. But what I'm really excited to do is take some of the experience I had working in documentary work, daily storytelling, and the journalism realm, and tell the stories now of conservationists doing work in the world, everything from saving and protecting rhinos in South Africa to working with Sam and Mark in Colorado with some of the work they have going on here regarding cats and wolves and that sort of thing, to work in South America and Brazil, um, protecting jaguars and keeping an eye on the environments that they patrol. Work with the rewilding Chile folks in conservation might know the story of Doug and Chris Tompkins and how Tompkins Conservation worked to buy up and preserve land in Chile. So we're all over the place. We're all over the world. And that's just a small overview of what keeps me busy days and most nights.
I know you're very much. I always wonder, where in the world is Bill right now?
Ooh, that should be a podcast.
I never know, but then I can go on your Instagram and I can get a little bit of insight of where you might have at least just been, whether you're there or not anymore. By the time I see the picture, I don't know. But I love following you on Instagram because your stories are so engaging there, even in such a small format. And I love how you have really utilized technology as such an important tool, both in the conservation toolbox, but in the storytelling toolbox. And maybe we could just start in Chile, because you had mentioned that with what happened with the Tompkins and what a powerful story that has been and how that's shaping conservation down there.
And for those that don't know, can you explain who they are?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Doug and Chris Tompkins, folks who are fashionistas. Chris Tompkins was the president of Patagonia outdoor wear. Doug worked with Esprit and North Face for many years and set up those fashion companies there for outdoor wear. And when they got together, they partnered to form Tompkins Conservation, which in a nutshell worked to purchase large parks in South America and Chile. And Patagonia, the region down there, if anybody has been or can get there, it's one of the most stunning landscapes you'll ever see. Folks who maybe know the Canadian Rockies or Colorado's Rocky Mountains, Chile is similar. It's larger, it's more wild. It has mountains, it has rivers, it has lakes, and it has volcanoes. It has coastline, and it has inland areas. And so what Doug and Chris did is they bought up this land and gave it back to the government. They donated it to the government in Chile as well as Argentina to protect that landscape forever. And what's been magical to see about that is it wasn't just white guys and gals coming in to take resources from another country. They worked with those countries to staff them completely with the folks who live there, which anybody in conservation knows. Communities that surround these special places and that care for these special animals, they have to see a value there. It's an investment not just in their homes, but in the places that make them special. And so what we've been working on with Tompkins Conservation for a few years now is we take our technology to monitor some of the flora and fauna in those places. We're moving more and more into marine monitoring and partnerships there, working with an organization in Colorado called the Ocean First Institute, Mickey McComb and her group there, to identify endangered sharks in some of these places in order to protect them in some of the coastal areas. Another good example of how technology can really help protect wildlife is to keep an eye on other animals that move into protected places that shouldn't be there. You know, in America, when you talk about our wild bison here, a big contention from the ranching community that often surrounds places like Yellowstone or Grand Teton National Park to keep these wild animals out of ranch land has been they bring up this disease called brucellosis, which I don't think has ever been proven to cause disease in cattle. But the flip side of that, what we see in Chile and Argentina is in a protected park where you have a population of endangered huemul deer. They're the most endangered deer in the world. When you have cattle coming in, bringing in disease that causes these abscesses on these endangered animals, that's a problem as well. So the technology is not just used for specifically wildlife, but to keep an eye on the other factors that might come into play affecting them, if that makes sense. So that's kind of been an exciting project for us in the past couple of years to work with that organization. And everything from keeping an eye on maybe pumas going into some sheep land to helping ranchers and community members monitor animals that they might not want to have to deal with on a daily basis. We are working more and more with Colorado ranchers and the parks here, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to hopefully implement some of this to help people get along with the wolves that have been reintroduced here. Another really good example of this sort of thing is in Tanzania, where we monitor elephant movements into communities, which elephants follow their historic migration routes, often along water sources, which people need to access as well. And they can do some real damage to people who rely on crops to feed their families. So I know we started with Doug and Chris and then went all over the place, but it's just a pretty good perspective on how this need for conservation is such a, this need for technology in conservation is such an important part of what's happening in conservation now. We're proud to be part of that.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me when, when we speak with folks within conservation and advocacy, you go on their organization's website and you have your executive directors, maybe a science director or biologist and folks like that. When you pull up wildlife protection solutions, the staff is very different. The job positions look more like it's out of Silicon Valley, and there's many software engineers and developers, and so with this technology, what has its origin with you guys? Is it mostly the software and then hardware is coming from different entities? Or tell me a little bit about how this works. What makes yours different than going to, I know it's a big difference, but going to like Bass Pro Shop and getting a camera trap? That's not what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, great question. Great question there, Mark. And to kind of set that up, let me tell you a little bit about our founders, Dave Widener and Sue Thompson. They come from a background of digital signage and also some software development. And so when Sue has always been a wonderful wildlife advocate in her personal life, and when she and Dave got together, this partnership became something more than that, where they wanted to take the wonderful successes they had in the tech world and apply it to conservation. And it really had been, up until then, something that was untapped in the AI type of world. Okay, so think 10 years ago, you didn't hear that term AI a whole lot. And if you did, it had to do with things like artificial insemination, right? So,
exactly.
So yeah. What these guys have done is we are funded by an endowment. So one of the nice things is most of our work is philanthropic. We're not selling a product. We're donating our technology to help people manage and protect endangered animals and the landscapes that they live on. And so the difference now with all of this is, let's say, for example, you set up your Cabela's trail camera, and it will take an image and can send that image to you on your phone. The tricky part is, let's say you're looking to keep people out of an area, or you want to know where elephants or wolves or jaguars are. What the AI technology does is it's a big filter which takes out everything except cars, if people shouldn't be accessing your land, animals. It's a filter to see what animals are moving and in what directions, or people. Certain people should be in certain places, certain people should not. If you have a national park that is off limit to hunters and you have a camera set up and see people go in with dogs or guns, in the anti-poaching world, you send an anti-poaching unit out to see what's going on. And there have been instances where we've been on meetings. We have a big display here at work where we kind of can voluntarily keep an eye on all these cameras sending data. We have seen incidents go down where people shouldn't be in a place. The AI identifies them, the anti-poaching units go out, and in places like South Africa, where this is very serious, where you're running into people who work for cartels, um, shootouts occur. This is how serious some of these protected areas take anti-poaching. And so that's kind of the AI part of it all. It's the technology to identify cars, people, and animals and where they are on the landscape. We also partner with some other organizations. One is called SMART. SMART is an acronym for Spatial Monitoring and Reporting Tool. Another one is Earth Ranger, where your patrols in the field, your rangers, can enter data on where they are when, if you see a fence down, if you see repairs that need to be made, if you see a dam is broken, if you see a fire break out. All this information can be logged and updated, where managers of these protected places can then take action to either remedy or fix or support what they need to do. It's like having an extra staff member, a camera in the field that you have to go out and check an SD card once every 2 weeks if you can get there, or even less. This allows people to monitor their landscapes and their wildlife in real time.
That
So,
is just
yeah.
incredible. It's the coolest thing ever. And I think that's your Bass Pro Shop difference, Mark, is that, my Bass Pro Shop camera is going to get the grass moving every 2 seconds, run out of battery, die, and I'll have to look through a billion images to find maybe one coyote. This seems like it's just very high tech, and the community buy-in part is something that really sticks out to me. It is so cool that you have these different communities around the world working with you and with this technology. And I'm wondering, how do you see these communities and tourism and ranching groups that you work with and conservation? How is that all intersecting?
Well, each place, Sam, is going to be different, of
Mhm.
course, right? How it all comes together. But with let's just pick Brazil, for example. Okay. So the Pantanal region, it's the largest wetland in the world. Okay. People often describe the Amazon as the lungs of the world. My friend Abby Martin, who runs the Jaguar ID project in Brazil, describes the Pantanal as its beating heart, where the Pantanal pushes out water into South America. So if you think of your heart moving blood through your body, the Pantanal does the same thing with water to keep this ecosystem alive and to keep the communities around it alive. So as we all know, water, whether you're in the Western United States or Namibia or Madagascar, water is life. And when you boil it all down,
The
the
water
land,
or the facts?
the fats. That was good, very nice. But as we heat up, it's all going to boil, Mark. So that's
Oh man.
another get me involved in the
Which
climate call.
uh-huh. This is why we need our lungs and our heart. So no,
Exactly.
right. So Abby and you are working in the Pantanal and it's all coming together there. How is it moving that way?
It all comes together in a wonderful variety of ways. Okay, so a lot of people either focus on the micro which I would say, for example, if you're a Jaguar fan, you want to love the Jaguars. The macro version is protecting the landscape that they live on. And so the landscape that they live on, there are factors that challenge those cats. And the jaguar on land there, it's the largest cat in the Americas. It is the umbrella species. Jaguars drive the life on the landscape when it comes to nature there. And so people like Abby have set up something called the Jaguar ID Project, where visitors to that area can follow along on an application or a book and identify the cats that they see. That data is loaded into a database. So what Abby has effectively done is, in capturing the data and the information, she puts citizen scientists to work. They're tourists. Okay.
Wow.
So that factors into people who will say, I'm a big fan of watching Marcella, my favorite cat down there, have cubs this year. She mated with Osato, say, for example, and their offspring. So you're actually putting people who love the landscape and the cats to work. Okay. That's one example. That brings money to the communities where the local boat drivers, the local guides, the hotel and restaurant owners all benefit from those cats on the landscape. And a lot of us who work in conservation, we know the line, if it pays, it stays. So rather than come up with a reason to love an animal, the economic factors that they bring to an area is a pretty easy way to get people on board with that. However, there are other challenges to those cats on the landscape. You have ranchers who do not want to see them and will kill them at any chance they get. Brazil's unique in the sense that there's no hunting there, but there's still that distrust of predators when it comes to cattle ranching. That's one example. Another example is gold mines, which surround a lot of the Pantanal region there, and outflows from gold mines bring a lot of mercury into the water. And so scientists go to this place. It's a wonderful laboratory. They work with organizations like Panthera, which focuses on cats around the world. Panthera brings partnerships, not just to Abby and her staff of Elena Aime Santos Lima, who works for her, but other folks as well. My good friend Aisa Sepulveda focuses on ocelots there. So a lot of this technology tracking ocelot movements with cameras so they can see where these ocelot move during the very, very wet or the very, very dry seasons, and help people figure out what parts of the Pantanal as the big picture needs protection and when. Okay,
I
so
love
that's
that.
that part. It's pretty cool, right?
It's very cool.
Absolutely.
And so can anyone do that citizen science that you're talking about? Like, can I, Sam from Colorado, sign up to go out with Helena and
Uh-huh.
look at jaguars? And then is that part of tourism, and that brings in dollars to that region as well? Is that
Absolutely.
how it's, so we're paying to play and stay, and we're also finding communities that are living with jaguars. And are you living down there with jaguars every day when you're there, Bill?
When
What's
you're
that
there,
like?
you can. When I stay at the Panthera Research Center there, um, there's also a school, and nobody keeps a better eye on the river than kids when they're in school. You know, they're paying attention, but they're also looking out. So I can't tell you how many times we've been there at the Panthera Ranch, in the middle of the day, taking a break from the heat, where the kids will scream, run outside, out by the fence there, point, and there's jaguars moving through. So that
Wow.
happens quite often, where you can see them, and you're always aware, of where you are down there. But they're just part of such a wonderful landscape with amazing bird life and capybaras. If you guys love those little Dr. Seuss looking, well, they're not little;
Not
they're the
little, yeah.
largest rodents in the world. But and
They're rodents of
alpacas.
unusual size.
They are rodents.
They're the largest in the world, but it's so wonderful, and the friendships that I've made there have been just amazing, and it's growing. It's growing all the time, just like with with your podcast here and all the good people you guys bring together. It's a community. We don't have to necessarily live together, but we know how to work together, and that's what gives us all hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like the jaguars are actually part of that community, which I would love to see more of that in the United States, where the animals are part of the community, really of that lifeblood, right, that's flowing into that community as well. Do we have any parallels with species like that here that you can think of?
Absolutely. And, I've sat in on some calls with you guys as well as the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And what I'd really like to do is get some Colorado or any Western rancher. I don't care, any rancher anywhere in the world. I'd love for those guys to come down and see a really great example at a ranch on the outskirts of the Pantanal. It's the northern Pantanal, and the ranch is called Pusada, which means ranch, Pieval. And the owners of Pusada Pieval are cattle ranchers, gold miners, safari outfitters. They do all kinds of other things. They're involved in restaurant. They've got some amazing restaurants there. And when you talk about community and communities that have community members really make it work, these guys do. And I'll talk quickly through some of what they offer. You can stay at Pusada Pieval, get up early in the morning and go on a wildlife safari where you see everything from giant anteaters, giant otters, jaguars, jabiru storks, all kinds of bird life, capybara, and a bird called a rhea there. The rheas are like South American emu, I guess, is a pretty good way to describe it, right? Kind of looks like these ostrich lying about. As you're out on your safari drive, you also have the pantaneros, the cowboys moving cattle. Okay, so these big, beautiful white cows that kind of look like Brahma bulls with a big hump on their back. All this is happening on the ranch. And what's been great about this is the owners of this ranch see the value in people coming to see the wildlife. And so you might say, well, Bill, how do they do that with jaguars roaming around, taking capybara from the ponds and occasionally taking a, um, a calf from a mama cow? Well, what these guys have done is they changed just a little bit how they ranch. Rather than let all the cows and all the bulls roam free range year round, where they're dealing with calves born willy nilly any time of the year, they now separate the bulls at certain times of the year, have the cows grazing in a different part of the ranch. What this does is it gives the pantaneros a focus where they're not trying to keep an eye on everything everywhere all at once. They're with this limited group of cattle in a limited part of the ranch at a certain time of year. Different time of year, the bulls are allowed to go out and breed with the cows. The pantaneros keep an eye on this in another limited part of the ranch. Once the cows are pregnant, they move these gals into a different part of the ranch that they also use as a nursery for when the calves are born. The bulls are no longer with them. The calves are surrounded by an electric fence, and the cows raise those calves for a limited amount of time until they can all be turned back out into a different part of the ranch. So if you think of a clock and animals moving around, the numbers on a clock, that's how these ranchers have changed things. What they've done, that's amazing. And I can show anybody who's curious about it, video of the AI technology where we set up AI cameras outside these fences, electric fences, which were designed by the folks at Panthera, who are also ranchers. You see two young jaguars walk up to a fence and they look at each other kind of like kids in a candy store when nobody's looking. And they look at each other and you see behind the fence a mama cow and her calf. And you're expecting to see those jaguars jump through the fence and get the calf, right? Well, jaguar number one walks up to the fence, puts his nose on the fence, gets a bit of a shock, kind of does what a cat does when it hisses and paws at the ground for a little bit and runs away. The other jaguar looks and says, wait, you didn't get in. I bet I can. Then it thinks better of it and they wander off. The very next night, those same jaguars walk right past that same spot on the fence and don't even look in. So people say, okay, so you happen to capture that. What's the data? A typical yearly loss for calves there would be about 35. The first year this was implemented, they lost one.
That's a good reduction.
So, pretty good. So the technology is there to help. The folks willing to make it work helps, and the income that Pusada Puval makes from tourism rivals that of what they make as cattle ranchers. So when you ask for comparisons, Sam, in America, we have a challenge with ranchers who do amazing work living side by side with wildlife. But what I would say is, like, for example, I know wolves in Colorado are quite the hot topic now. When wolves would den in Colorado, if the surrounding ranchers would have gotten together and said, we don't want them here, but we could make a ton of money if we charged people to come see them, I think they would not just see the value in that, but also slowly learn to appreciate those animals' place on a landscape as a predator in controlling disease, in moving the wildlife from one place to another. A lot of times, my good friends who are hunters will say, dude, you're competing with my deer and my elk out there. But what they need to realize is predators eat what predators eat, but they also accomplish so many more things. They keep animals moving through a landscape where something's not overgrazed. They take out the weak and the sick to help keep disease at a minimum. And in places like Brazil with jaguars, my good friend Paul Rad down there did years of study on jaguar feces, right? Paul picked up so much jaguar poop. I've started to come up with some funny nicknames for him. But his study with just looking at what comes out of a cat, he discovered a parasite, which then the community could look and say, Paul could say to them, these jaguars have a parasite that they get from eating feral hogs. If you, as a cowboy in the wild or as a hunter who comes out to kill these, you might want to know that this parasite is in them, because if you ingest that parasite, you're going to get very sick and you could possibly die. If that parasite is in the water and your community is using water for any number of things, knowing that a parasite is in there could really mess you up. A lot of traditional medicine in places like Brazil, they will say, for example, you have a cut or a wound on your hand. A lot of times people will take a frog or a toad and put it on that wound to kind of stimulate coagulation. But if that parasite is there, they serve as a bioindicator, not just for what you might see obviously, but for what might be hidden in the other resources on that landscape. So as you can tell, it's a lot happening there that unless you get involved with some of these conservation groups, you might not really know. But a lot of people are doing a lot of very good things. And I just hope that I can take some of this information and good examples from around the world and kind of sprinkle it about to people who face challenges trying to make a good living and come to some sort of an agreement and understanding of not just our value, but the value of the wild animals that surround us every day.
That's incredible. And I'm so happy. I'm sure Paul's mother is really happy that his passion for poop is doing good for humanity and the wilds these days.
Absolutely. Paul's mom's a great lady, so she's happy.
Good. And you know, with this paradigm shift that ranch has experienced, I know that kind of thing is possible here. And ranching in the United States has gone through a lot of changes in the past 100 years. And you know, if the ranching community and wildlife advocates can look at the economic side of changing the paradigm and showing that, hey, you can actually increase revenues by having these carnivores around, that, you know, that's going to be the biggest driver, is getting, and you know, instead of just preaching, hey, we need to do this for the ecosystem, which is 100% true, but that doesn't always land when people are thinking about their livelihoods. I do want to shift. We've talked a lot about jaguars. I wanted to talk more about the ocelots and what their purpose is, as far as their corridors that they travel. Is that different from jaguars? Is there differences in how we need to protect them?
It's different, Mark. It's different. It's the ranges are, as you can imagine, are smaller than what you'd find with the jaguar. I think from my understanding with ocelots is some of the value in the study there, you can apply what a small cat does to a larger cat. And when everybody's out monitoring with data, whether it be GPS collars or other types of things, all that data can be combined when people work together. So Panthera is good about that, where they'll have jaguar information, ocelot information, and how to extrapolate that into the larger part of the landscape. As far as ocelots go, they don't really face similar types of threats. They are a lot of the challenges with ocelots comes from habitat loss, right? They tend to live in the canopy. They tend to hunt at nighttime. And so in places like the Pantanal, where you have soybean farming, cutting down a lot of the native range of those places, or gold mines interrupting and interfering, that's one of the biggest challenges for ocelots. The other thing with ocelots is they're really cool cats. They're small. They do find their way into the pet trade and roadside zoos a lot because, as you can imagine, it's easier to manage an ocelot than it is a jaguar. And so those are the big challenges with them. But those animals that you see in those places, they're not well cared for. A lot of them have their teeth removed and their claws ground down or pulled out. So keep that in mind when you happen to see any type of roadside zoo not necessarily managed like we would here in the United States.
Yeah, and I want to get to a bit of the travel pieces and what ordinary people can do as they're exploring the natural world around them next. But before we do that, I did have one last species I wanted to ask about that you've worked with. And then I'd love for our listeners to learn how they can engage in responsible travel. So the species I care about, Bill, is the giant otter. I think otters are adorable. They are really cool, but the giant otter, that is a very large creature as opposed to our river otters here in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit about giant otters and what they reveal about rivers and freshwater ecosystems?
Absolutely, Sam, and they're really they're a favorite of mine as well. You know, when I'm there, we do focus a lot on the cats, but just like jaguars are the top predator on land, those giant otters, 6 to 7 feet long, are the top predator in the water.
Wow.
And so remember down there that you've got the giant otters swimming up and down every day, mostly pulling up catfish and some piranhas from what you can't see below. But there's also caiman there and lots of reptiles. Anaconda are one of my favorite to see down that way. So the giant otters are the top predator in the water. And you can't go to the Pantanal and not see them, and certainly not fall in love with them. They make a wonderful sound as they go screaming up and down the river. They're very territorial. You can find their dens in some of the hidden turns of the Cuiaba and the Picari rivers there, but they're social. They're almost like dolphin-like in how you see them kind of porpoise through the water. They've got great teeth and great markings there, and just like the jaguars have their fan base, so do the giant otter folks. My friend Caroline Luchtenberger runs the Giant Otter Project there. It has a great Brazilian name, but in the interest of not embarrassing myself here, I'll not try to produce the Portuguese pronunciation there. But the otters are identified much like the jaguars. The jaguars with their spot patterns on their faces and both sides, but the jaguars have white markings on their face and chest as well. So the folks who love to identify them do the same thing. They take a picture, they can upload to a database, not just to help Caroline and her staff monitor these otters, but the other folks who love him as well. One interesting thing I'll tell you guys, because it's a perfect time to bring it up. The technology, let's say we have a camera trap set out to monitor jaguar movements. We do the same for giant otters at their dens. And what we've come to find is lots of information that wasn't necessarily known in the past few years. Jaguars are increasing in that part of the Pantanal, which is really, really good. The giant otter folks would say that's good for you cat guys, but we're actually seeing a decline in our population. And there's lots of reasons for that. One, I think, is that could really use some management is limiting the number of boats, tourism boats that go speeding up and down these rivers to watch the birds and the cats. Because as these otters are born and they're young, they're out there trying to learn to hunt and swim. And when you have many, many boats a day zipping up and down the river, it gets pretty rough for those little guys. And there's not a lot of other options. They have to live in the rivers. They can't just move on to land because they need the fish there to survive. But another thing that's been really interesting to see is we never really we'd see jaguars come up to the riverbank and look out at what we call a mob, a group of otters. And those otters get together, they all get together like a big posse, and they'll stare that jaguar down on a log, and all of a sudden one of them will give a sign and they rush the cat.
Ha.
All these otters. It's fun if you guys can find that online. There's only a couple, but it's kind of like it's just like rushing a football field after you win the game. But the cats totally freak out and run away. However, the camera traps and the technology has taught us two cool things about the cats and the otters. One is that jaguars were often thought to be very solitary, but what we've learned with this technology is the fact that from time to time, male jaguars especially will get together and form a coalition where they will go and they will hunt together. We've seen behaviors from different cats that you would see when they're hunting a caiman. They tend to sit on a high bank or in a tree branch and then jump once the caiman comes close. You see all those fabulous videos of those cats launching out of the trees. But what some of these cats have started to do, and I don't know how they do it in this murky water, they will spot a caiman across the bank, swim out a little bit, right? Jaguars are aquatic cats. And once they get close where they can do some free diving, they turn into a submarine where the cat dives under the water and pops up right in front of the caiman. Now, those caiman are used to being hunted from behind, where they want to run into the water. Caiman aren't great runners on land, so they've got nowhere to go but towards the cat. And again, those videos online, it's wonderful to see those cats change their behavior to become better hunters. Now, when it comes to the otters, when we set up cameras at the otter dens, we found more and more jaguars actually digging otters out of those dens. So everybody's friendly, but it's like, oh, we wish those cats wouldn't dig these pups out of the dens when their moms aren't around. So behavior's changing. A lot of it's a lot of things. And it's just amazing what this technology shows us about animal behaviors. And if we need to change our behaviors to help them, that's one thing. Or if we need to modify their behaviors, that's another thing. So that's kind of how it's going down that way.
That's incredible. As you were telling the story of the jaguar swimming out to the caiman, I'm just picturing you two jaguars sitting on the edge of the river, like, "Hey man, I'm going to swim out there and get him." Like, okay,
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
dare you.
well, if it works, tell me about it. But you're on your own.
Well, sometimes they do make poor decisions, but those cats, they're used to holding their breaths for some periods of time. As they'll jump on a caiman, the first thing those caiman want to do is go down. A lot of times they'll take cats down with them for a while as they work things out underwater. But sometimes you'll be in a boat and you'll see a a jaguar grab a caiman and go underwater, and you think, oh my God, it feels like it's been forever. You don't see bubbles coming up. You don't see any water movement. You just think, wow, that didn't work out for the cat. And then all of a sudden, it's just like an eruption. This jaguar launches from the bottom, comes up and takes just the biggest breath you've ever heard a cat take,
Wow.
and he goes back down to find it.
Wow.
So it's just amazing things to see out there, and the stories are endless. And if you guys ever can get down there to see it, number one, I'd love to take anybody who wants to go, and number two, you'll never forget it. It's a wonderful place in a wonderful country with wonderful people doing great wildlife work.
Oh, that's incredible. So you mentioned people going down there. So I'd love for us to wrap up today with how people can travel and experience nature, especially species like the species you're observing, Bill, in a responsible and sustainable way. What can they look out for, and what should they look for as they plan their vacations and their tourism trips?
Well, again, Sam, technology has made all this so much better than it used to be. Do some online research. What I always like to do is, if you can find an organization that you believe in, right? You might love jaguars, but you can't give them money. If you can find an organization that you believe in, where if you do go on a jaguar tour, you can search the ethical tour operators and talk to the people who have given them reviews. Ask them good questions about how they move through that environment, if they give these animals proper space to hunt, to mate, to raise their young, to cross the river. Do your research. But what I always like to do is, and I just did this in India, try to find an organization that you can visit for one day where you might not be out on the water or on a safari, but in the communities, whether it's educating children, supporting people with things like agroforestry to protect the environment, folks working to mitigate maybe outflow from a gold mine, visit a mine, visit a ranch, talk to those folks, and let them know that one of the reasons you're there is because of their commitment to the wildlife that lives with them.
Well, I think that's an excellent way to wrap up a fascinating interview where I just traveled the world. I don't know about you, Sam, but I was with him every step of the way there. So I'm really impressed by the work that you do and the work of wildlife protection solutions. And we will make sure that we have their information in our show notes. And thank you so much again, Bill, for joining us on the Wildlife Wire today.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Sam. You guys know I'm your biggest fans, and whatever I can do to help further all our efforts, not just in the tech world, but also in the conservation storytelling realm, please feel free to share my information with anybody who reaches out to you guys, and let's keep up the good work.
Great. Thank you, Bill. This has been an episode of the Wildlife Wire with me, Mark Searles, and my co-host, Samantha Miller. Thank you for listening.